Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on engaging and developing holistic advisors. We're going to get started here in just a moment as we wait for a few more folks to join. Thank you. All right, good afternoon once again. Welcome to today's webinar on engaging and developing holistic advisors. My name is Tim Karer. I'm the Director of Research at Karer Bielen Research and Consulting, and we're pleased to be hosting today's event. I would first off like to take a moment to thank our sponsors, without whom we could not be doing this. Our sponsors today are Ameriprise Financial Institutions Group, excuse me, Ameriprise Financial Institutions Group, as well as E-Money. We would also like to thank our friends at Pac Life for their support of today's event. Today's discussion is a continuation of something that we kicked off last month. It's a series of webinars centered around the theme of holistic advice and the delivery of holistic advice through banks and credit unions. At this point, we've all spent a lot of time on events like this one, that is virtual events. And we all know that it can be difficult to recreate the kind of natural flow of conversation and debate that happens at an in-person study group. But we've brought together a virtual roundtable today that I think is up for the challenge. Joining us today on your screen, we have David Bressler from Ameriprise Financial, Kelly Brennan from E-Money, Michael Estes from the Kentucky Bank, Steve Frank from a Legacy Federal Credit Union, John Woodford from BBVA in Investment Services, Chris Slonaker from First Horizon Advisors, Noreen Fallon from Huntington Financial Advisors. Thank you all for joining us today and being a part of the conversation. We have a few other members of the Karer Bielen team with us as well. Ken Karer and Peter Bielen, our principals, as well as Lee Van Hewley, who directs our financial planning practice here at the firm, and is, I would say, maybe the ringleader of today's circus. And finally, there's all of you out there in the audience. We've gotten used to at this point watching baseball games with empty stands and golf tournaments with no one in the gallery. Let's not make today's roundtable feel like they're playing to an empty stadium. You all in the audience have a lot to offer. Please join the conversation. Please jump in. We've given you a couple of ways to do that. One is to click the raise your hand button at the bottom of your screen. I'll get a notification and that will allow me to bring you into the panel. You can join us on audio or video as well if you're set up to do it. There's also a chat button at the bottom of your screen if you prefer to interact that way. We'll all be on the lookout for any questions, but yeah, please jump in and join the conversation. With that, I'd like to pass it over to Ken Kehrer, who's going to kick us off, I believe, with a question. Ken.
Yeah, so let's start the conversation. And after our last meeting, we had several questions from participants about what do you mean by holistic advisor? What's a holistic advisor? And I did my best to try to answer that, but I realize I've got a bunch of people sitting around the table right now who can probably answer that better than I can. Anyone? What's a holistic advisor?
I'll take that. The root really of that word is whole. And so what we're talking about is giving a client really the whole picture, the whole piece, not just looking at a point in time transaction or not just shopping rates or trying to fire a stock or a product at them, but we're talking about looking at everything and figuring out how all the puzzle pieces fit together to get them ultimately to where they want to be, which is their goals and their dreams, not just how much can I make on this stock.
Mm-hmm. Anyone have anything to add to that?
I'll jump in. I think Michael's right on point with that. I would add that we look at a lot of non-financial pieces also, or financial pieces that a lot of people don't want to look at. Example would be debt to income ratios, because I think that helps set us up. Another one are the legal documents. No matter what stage in life we are, those legal documents become very important. To my knowledge, none of us on the panel are attorneys, but we deal with them, literally every day for our clients.
Anyone else? I think Peter, at the session that you did for Visa last time, Kevin McCarthy, the way he put it was, you have to become life coaches. Right. That was an interesting take right. on the same issue.
Yeah, I mean, maybe in the simplest sense, it's for advisors to operate beyond their investment role. And so many advisors are focused on the investment component of what they do with clients and how they build their practice and their skill set. And I think when you take it and look at it in the holistic view, it's a lot more than investments of what we do for clients. That is one segment. It may have been the segment that led to all this for many advisors and many firms, but it's only one thing of what we do today in this advisor role.
So today we're going to be talking about developing holistic advisors. But let's start at the beginning and say, suppose you were going to hire an advisor or 2 or 10. What are you looking for? It's pretty clear. We could say now that, is it fair to say that most advisors aren't holistic today, are not holistic? Is that a fair?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And so one approach, of course, is to develop them, get them to change. But an initial approach might be, let's hire some people who are maybe already holistic or are likely to be holistic. So what are you looking for as you're hiring an advisor?
Well, I think for the advisors that are apt or prone to become holistic, what you can't teach is the care and compassion that goes with that. I can't teach you to care about people. That's got to come through in the interview. That's got to come through in the process. If you care and if you are willing to invest yourself in the lives of your clients, that's where I can, if you're not doing it right now, I can kind of turn you into a holistic advisor. But if you're a, stock pusher, annuity pusher, you're just out for, the old YTB, that's a problem. I can't ever turn you into holistic, because holistic means that you have to care. To get into the documents, to get into the kids, to get into the family situations, to understand when the client needs to make decisions really in the best interest of their family over maybe what a point in time financial decision is, that takes a lot of investment emotionally. And if you don't have the capacity to do that, it doesn't matter how many of these seminars we send you to, you're just not going to do it. I think it's very similar to when you first interview an advisor. a person that wants to be an advisor, you know, in some of the training programs. Either some people can sell or they can't. Either you care or you can't. You usually find that out in the first few minutes of the interview.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Ken, I'll just build off of that. You know, I think one of the major skills that we think is becoming really important is leadership. And I think that in a couple of different ways. First, you know, this conversation's got me thinking, you know, one of the fastest growing designations in our system is the BFA, which is Behavioral Financial Advisor, for folks that are trying to just become better coaches, better life coaches, just the earlier comments. I also think is leadership, because in order to serve clients holistically, oftentimes you need more than just you. You know, you need an entire team around you that helps enable you to do that better, especially as you get to scale, and especially as you get big and build a larger business. And if you're going to lead a group of folks, you know, one of the things we keep finding is advisors, many of them got to where they are because they're good advisors, but they're actually pretty crappy leaders. And you need to have those leadership skills to support the team around you in order to get the scale you required to actually go deliver holistic advice to, you know, more than just a couple of families.
I can see that. I've known an advisor or two that I wouldn't want to be my son's little league coach, you know. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I look at, oops, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, John.
No, I was going to add that we also segment our advisors to some extent. So the sales managers have the ability, obviously, to hire whom they will and who they want. But internally, if they're going to work with our high net worth and ultra high net worth client segments, they have to earn that right and earn that title to do that. And so we've got certain steps and a progression path they have to take to be able to reach that higher level of customer and work within our private banking group. And so one of the tools that we use is we've partnered with Canon Financial and utilize their 13 wealth management issues documents, of course. And then, of course, they have to get the designation of certified wealth strategist to be able to do that, which really promotes their level, gives them more of that holistic approach, and then they address all of those 13 wealth management issues as a part of their process. A majority of our advisors are more retail advisors, and they'll work with our mass and our mass affluent customers. And there we have some tools that they can utilize as well that start them towards that progression path.
Yeah, and that's getting us into the developing advisors once you've hired them. But let's stick for the moment with who you'd want to hire or who you wouldn't want to hire. Steve, did you have something to add to that?
One of the things that we look for, it's stealing from Southwest Airlines, you know, hire for attitude, train for skills, because there's, you know, Michael talked about it, where, you know, what are the attitudes of it, the emotional intelligence side of it. So we focus on that a lot. And it raises a question that I'd love to hear from the group on is, we're an aging animal, so to speak. You know, what our industry is, the average age of the advisors is fairly high. And so you know, I'd love to know where you're recruiting from. For example, if you're recruiting right out of college, one of the concerns that we've trying to address are the life experiences. You know, have you bought a car? Have you bought a house? Have you rented your own apartment? All of those things seem, you know, we can say, well, we can train for that, but, and I agree that we can, but it digs that hole, as Michael said, look at the word, only look at it as HOLE. What kind of hole are you starting from versus, you know, the broadness or the expanse of it. So we're looking for life experiences too. And so looking at someone straight out of college, although we like to add that diversity, it makes the job a little bit tougher.
Mm-hmm. If I could build off of, you know, what Steve just shared, I think those are great comments. I think the one caveat I would say, generally I agree. The one thing I would maybe differ on is there's a growing field of undergraduate CFP programs, and you know there's 130, 140, something like that. programs now where you can get your undergraduate degree in financial planning, sit for the CFP exam when you graduate. And we've partnered with them. I happen to a little fun project I get to do on the side where we do a bunch of interesting things with those programs nationally, including a big competition at the end of the year. And those students, I got to tell you, I mean, yeah, they lack some of the life experience, but how many of us at 18 years old said financial planning is what I want to do? Right now, almost probably none of us. Yet these are folks that are deciding really early on in life that this is their calling. And generally we're not bringing those folks in and starting them, face the client on day one, but they are great folks to come in and apprentice and get to understand the business and then work their way into face-to-face client relationships. And I'm so excited. That's a really fast growing major in colleges all across the country because I think we need it.
Yeah. One of the things we do, and when you're looking at the hiring part, is within the banks, we've got some licensed banker roles where we'll bring them in and kind of coach them up through those life experiences. That or junior brokers, we'll bring them in and partner them with one of our older, seasoned advisors. Because let's be honest, especially when we started, I started at 19. I got my 7 at 19, and I remember sitting in cubicles and smiling and dialing with the stock of the day. And, that's a rough way to cut your teeth and to get going. And I'm sure I gave people terrible advice when I first started out, but we grow, our life experiences grow, we go through those things. And what we try to do is say, kid right out of college, let's put you with a guy that's in his late 50s, 60s, and learn from him, watch what he does, watch how he makes the decisions, not only for clients, but let him coach you through those decisions in life, right? When you're renting that apartment, when you're buying that first house, get that financial advice and feel what that relationship looks like, so that you can then do that with clients. And the other piece of it too is there's no, I wish there was an easy place for experience other than to get it, right? Until you get out and start giving financial advice, you're never going to know how to give financial advice. So we got to kind of start them slow and start them in a, for lack of a better term, contained environment. And then from there, let that grow on, whether it be from the licensed banker role to a junior, and then finally have them out on their own. But we believe not only in that progression, but also very strongly in mentorship. Make sure that you always have a mentor. I don't care what stage of your career you're in, there's somebody you can look up to that can help you through things. And sometimes it helps just to talk and to get that guidance to make decisions.
Last year, yeah.
Yeah, to jump in here, Ken, just to provide a perspective from a technology company at eMoney Advisor, we're really focused on helping develop advisors when they start in college. So one of the programs that we offer is our university program certification, where we actually partner with universities across the country, and we give their students the eMoney application where they can actually learn how to start to engage a client. They have different case studies that they do, and they learn how to actually go in there and have that engagement and build a financial plan. And it's designed around really trying to teach them how to develop those relationships and get them started sooner while they're in college and actually practice having those conversations. So that's one of the things that we're really passionate about from a technology perspective. We know how exciting, planning technology can be to, someone younger in a classroom than an online training. So that's just kind of our perspective as a technology organization, how we're doing it to try and develop them sooner.
Mm-hmm. Now, back to the points that Mike and Steve made. Last year, Lee and I looked into the possibility of using kind of an assessment test to identify whether someone had the right attitude and perspective. We did working with Tony Cole. We talked 5 firms, one of them being Steve's, into participating in this experiment where we took 24 advisors who they believed were already holistic and ran them through the assessment test, and then compared them to 15 very successful advisors who scored very well on the assessment test, and to say, will the test reveal some interesting things that could help us pick the right people? And I guess we would say we'd sort of, but not clear cut, right? Right, Steve? How would you say that we came up with that study?
I would say, I would agree with your assessment. One of the pieces, though, that I found as a real nice takeaway from that was the coaching that those individuals need is totally different from, to your point, Michael, smiling and dialing, totally different, mentoring, coaching, all of that kind of stuff. So I think it was, for me, it was a real nice takeaway, reaffirmed some of what I thought, but it also gave me a couple aha moments. So I think it was a worthwhile study, and I think it's on the right track.
Yeah, and essentially the overview of that study was that there were a few things that the holistic advisors showed, some things that might ordinarily be considered red flags in an assessment. They didn't do too well on handling rejection. They needed too much, they needed approval for what they wanted to do. They were low on taking responsibility. But on the other hand, in terms of what Tony Cole refers to as the must-hire flags, they scored very high on desire, motivation, and outlook. So, but again, I don't think you can take that to the bank, but some interesting insights. That study is available for free on our website if you want to look into the details of that.
Well, and I think that, Ken, I think that speaks to David's point about hiring out of the schools that are offering these majors or the concentrations, because to your point, they have that desire already. Now it's a matter of can we build on that?
Right.
The only difficulty there, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing that may not be a great place to start, is that we all work at firms where we've seen people with tons of designations that don't belong in front of clients. Just being honest, there's some great people I've worked with that have 24 letters after their name that I would never put in front of one of my clients. I would love to let them work on my financial plan. Actually delivering that and talking it through with somebody, there's no chance in the world. That's one of those things that, I don't know we can ever get an assessment for, because it's more feel. When you're sitting there, when you're talking, I always tell my team, to me, it's the strangers in the bar scenario, right? If me and you, prospective applicant, if we walked into a bar and we didn't know anybody, how many friends could you walk out with? How many people would care about you at the end of the night? Would they kind of remember you, or would they really care about you? Could you make a connection? It's that type of connection. Either you can build or you can't. And you either have the intrinsic ability where you care about how those relationships go. So I kind of smile when you mention they don't take rejection. Well, people that care don't. If I want to connect with you, if I want to take care of you, if I want to put my arm around you through life, it hurts if you reject me. Those are the advisors that, I'm usually coaching up because they're crying in their office because they lost an ACAT. Look, you lost a client. No big deal. Go get 3 more. There's people waiting outside. But that's what makes them really good holistic, because the ones they connect with, the ones they care about, they're able to plan through things with them and help navigate through life. That's where it's always going to be a gut kind of thing, more so than a, hey, if you can take this assessment. One quick sidebar. I always laugh at assessments anyway. When I first applied to the first firm that I worked for, I failed the assessment. They told me I would never be a successful advisor, that I couldn't make it as an advisor. The sales manager said, I like the guy. He's got a great personality. He hired me. I led the office for the next 3 years. So sometimes what we think is great, the paperwork doesn't match the feelings.
Right. It's the emotional intelligence is what I think you're really referring to, Michael. Beyond the financial intelligence that candidates can have, it's that emotional intelligence they have to relate to clients and communication. In some work that I've done with the absolute top producing advisors, it really shows that a unique ability to communicate and connect with people is universal throughout.
Okay, so you've hired the advisors now, right? And some of them you were right about, and some of them you weren't. But now you're trying to develop them into becoming holistic, or maybe these are people you've had in the firm for 10 years and they aren't holistic yet. What are you doing to get them there?
I'll speak up. The thing that I think is just as important as getting the right candidate is making sure that you align them with the right person that's going to be able to train them. So just like somebody that scores well on a test is not necessarily going to be the right person somebody that leads your firm in assets under management and revenue is not necessarily the best coach, the best teacher in that process. So where we've found pretty much the most success is let our top folks decide whether or not they want to be on teams or not. And then we watch to see if they are actually able to develop a team. If they can develop a team, they probably have the skills to really nurture somebody that's coming right in out of college and get them to think holistically and look at it from that perspective. But we've had a lot of very successful advisors that try and can't develop a team. So, but they're very successful advisors. So that other side of the equation of the match is really, really important.
And I know from some of the conversations I've had with some of you this week that you guys are doing some really neat things with developing existing advisors or even onboarding new advisors. So John, we were talking about some of the things that you're doing at BBVA. So I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, sure, Lee, thank you. So, and I don't know how many other firms employ a practice like this, but we have an internal team that we call the Financial Planning Center, and that's the team that I have the privilege of helping to manage. This team is going to be 100% CFPs. We keep them regional, so it's not a home office group. They're out in the field with our producers, with our financial consultants. And as a part of the onboarding strategy, they will have a one-on-one session with them. Of course, now it's going to be more of a virtual session than it is in person, but you know, in the past it was in person. But virtually, they're going to get to spend some time one-on-one with our CFPs to get to learn our planning tools, to learn our process, to get, you know, more than just a toe tipper, right? They're going to get, you know, submerged up to their waist level at least. And we encourage our new FCs to do 5 to 10 plans with our Financial Planning Center, jointly at first if they will. And then, of course, we have a migration path to try and teach them and get them to be self-sufficient. That whole parable of you could feed them a fish for life or you could teach them how to fish. Our team is tasked with helping them learn how to fish. And so I would say of all the plans that we do each year as a firm, and we have about 220 financial consultants, our financial planning team probably touches a third of those plans. And the other 2/3 are self-sufficient by our financial consultants. And in years past, we've been as high as a 90% adoption rate on our financial planning tools and being able to grow our financial consultants to at least a level of competence using our planning tools. So that's one of the things that we have as a financial planning center to help support, motivate, coach, train, and they are a salaried position. So this is not revenue share and we don't charge for the planning experience.
Oh, that's great. And, you know, I've met with advisors, and in particular, I'll meet with them. They don't know anything about like Social Security strategies or IRAs, and these are existing advisors, and that really scares me. So I think that the development of financial advisors is just so it's so important. And I really like, Noreen, I'd like you to share, because I really love some of the things that you're doing to try to identify needs and then kind of meet those needs with really targeted training.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. We have a couple of initiatives. So we've got, we do have 2 planning consultants and 1 advisory consultant who are in the field with advisors. Well, I keep saying that. I haven't been in the field since March, but now have, you know, a revolving call schedule going, and just similar to what John just said, their focus is to make sure advisors know, certainly familiar with the technology, but how to deliver a plan, what to focus on. You know, when the insurance piece was added, how to use it, how to talk about Social Security, all of those things. We've got and then we've got another team in the home office who helps with the technology, right? So if you're wondering, how do I input this? If you're that new with the technology, we've got a team that can help with the technology. But another thing we did was try to identify, because we've got a lot of advisors who've been with the firm for a long time, and as we try to migrate them to more of a planning and advisory focus, we spent a lot of time with the regional sales managers and identified what we call 4 pillars of training needs. And those are planning, advisory, practice management, and then protection, because obviously if you're a planner, you're talking about insurance too, right? So, and we're developing curriculum then, much like a university setup. So like 101 level courses, 201 level courses. It's a project we know will take several years to get to completion. But ultimately we'd love to have, if we ever go back into real live meetings, to have a regional sales manager be able to say, I'm going to spend the morning doing things like recognition and regional updates. And then, after lunch, we're going to break out, and I want these 6 guys over in this room doing a 201 level course on protection. And these 3 over in this room are, they're my newbies, and we're just going to start with how do you deliver a plan, that kind of thing. So those are some of the things we're working toward to make sure that the skill levels are a little more uniform across the 200 advisors.
So I do have a question for the whole group, and it's, we have an advisor that is really successful, and they haven't really been, we'll call it holistic or planning led or whatnot. And then how do we have them, are they comfortable with having a conversation and actually starting to financial plan, start to take this financial planning process when they haven't before? And when they don't want clients, or they might be afraid that their clients are going to say, well, why haven't we been doing this all along? So how do we make that transition for somebody who's been really successful to try to have them have those conversations with their clients?
Yeah, I can speak kind of the way I transitioned. I had been successful, but was essentially always taking the path of least resistance, grabbing one asset that was in front of me, just getting the 401k rollover. And you can build a great practice and be very successful and a top producer doing that. But, I was able to sit down with a business coach that said, yeah, but are you sure you have all of your clients' assets? And then we looked at the statistics that planning, it's more assets, it's better AUM, it's better ROA. And, of course, a lot, especially with high performing advisors, when you start challenging them on stuff, they usually get defensive and want to prove you wrong. So we went through, what I thought were my best clients that I had all of their assets. And when we went back with a planning approach, and the easy way to do that is, hey, we just got this new software. We just contracted with eMoney. We've got this brand new software. I want to show it to you because you're my best client. And so I want to walk through all of this stuff with you. And then you walk through it with them, and it's, wait a minute, you got an account over here and another one. Oh yeah, I've been meaning to tell you about that, and I've been meaning. And you find a bunch of assets, and then you leave that meeting and say, if this was my best client and I didn't have everything, goodness, what am I missing in the rest of the book? And so oftentimes it's the proof is in the pudding, and you got to, as a sales manager, as a business coach, whatever role or relationship you're in with the advisor, it's challenging and then helping them get through the first 1, 2, 3, and then letting their own eyes be opened up to the deficiencies in their practice that they honestly don't believe they're there. Hey, I'm a top producer. I don't have any deficiencies in my practice. You do. You just don't want to admit them yet.
So we embarked on a program a number of years ago, and we use it in a couple different ways. One way, though, that I think is critical is that the question I would ask the group, and I'm not expecting you to answer, but are the program's goals aligned with what you want for the holistic advisor? And we have changed our compensation model. And so we have taken high producing advisors that were not doing planning and said, look, we'll support your revenue. So we basically give them, most times it's a 3-year conversion. And so we'll guarantee their revenue, and then we base the goals off of financial plans, invested dollars, but not revenue. We expect that revenue piece is going to take a hit, but it tends to alleviate a lot of the fear of the advisor that, if I do this, my revenue is going to take a hit and all that kind of stuff. So we've changed a lot of our goals to make sure that we align from the bottom up, type thing. So you can look at it from a fiduciary point of view. They don't get paid any more for an annuity than they do for managed money, or however you want to look at it. It's all based on the amount of dollars that's coming in. And the second point I wanted to make is that we have gone outside the industry predominantly to start to build these advisors, the holistic advisors, because our experience has been it's so hard for folks to forget the way they've been doing it for whatever number of years. And it's a lot easier to and quicker for us to get people up and be pretty productive by bringing in people from outside the industry. They don't have those other bad habits, so to speak.
Good point. The other thing, something that was mentioned earlier, is teams. And Lee, to answer your question, to that experienced advisor that might not do planning well, if you partner him or her with an associate advisor or someone that does do planning well, then the advisor can position it as a resource that he now has. So it keeps him in control. It keeps them in control of that relationship, so they don't have to explain why they didn't do it before. They can position it as, we can do this now because I've added a resource, a person, a tool, something positive. But it comes back to being able to team, and that really helps in that transition. We see a lot of teams where the newest person on the team is very adept at planning, and that person helps the rest of the team members and really ups the game for all clients and all members of that team.
No, that's great, because in fact, I was just having a conversation. I do some consultations with advisors, and they're what do I say, surprised by what it can do and what it can show. And they're like, they're really successful. They're like, can I just hire you to do all my planning for me? So I think it kind of goes back to they really want to do it. A lot of the advisors I talk to, they really want to do it, but they just don't have the time. Well, that's the excuse they give, right? But they also, I think, to your point, Peter, I think they would love that. They'd love to partner with somebody that can, help bring that to their practice.
We've talked some about planning technology. If I remember correctly, Steve, I think you don't let a new advisor touch planning technology for a while.
Correct. I've got the old handy dandy HP 12C, and we make them do it on a whiteboard. And when they can do it on a whiteboard, then we'll bring in the technology, because we're big believers in the technology. It makes your life so simple. But part of the reason we went this way, two reasons. One is to make sure they understand the inputs, so that when the outputs come out and they don't look right, they understand that they've made a mistake in that piece. But the other aspect of it is, we found that we had so many advisors saying, well, this really doesn't rise to the level of XYZ, software, the time that it's going to take me to input it. And so when you make them do it all by hand, they pretty rapidly get to the point where they say, it's a whole lot easier to input the data. And now they're, so now they're using the software side of it. So we try and attack the problems from a couple different perspectives.
Any other comments on what you're doing to develop advisors?
Yeah, so Ken, this is Kelly jumping in here from a technology perspective. I think, just to echo, what's been shared so far, I think one of the things that we know to be true as a software company is you can't just hand an advisor planning technology and expect them to become a holistic advisor and a planner, right? So I think a lot of it is about the resources that technology firms offer in partnerships with a firm to help their advisors really adopt the software and be successful. I think for us at eMoney, one of the things that keeps us up at night is churn, right? We want to make sure advisors that do get to the point where they're on our software stay on our software and find success on it and see that ROI of implementing a planning software and becoming planning led. And one of the things that we try and focus on is coaching. So one-on-one coaching an advisor on how to have a client conversation with the platform, how to build a plan, and really how to get started implementing this experience. And then, at the home office level, it's really working with our practice management team to create a playbook that makes sense for the firm and that is custom and to the point earlier, aligns with the goals of the firm so that they can make sure they're developing the systems and the plan in a way that aligns with the brand. So that's just kind of our perspective that I think has helped.
John?
So I'll add one more thing, Ken, to this discussion. We've had good fortune with the retail bank partnership. So we are a bank broker dealer, and our advisors live and die, right, by the referrals they get from the bank. What we've been able to implement just over the last few months is an appetite from the retail side to share basic planning conversations and basic planning tools with the best portfolio clients of each banking center. And so the challenge that we have is the relationship managers now have a goal and an expectation to deliver 3 to 5 referrals to each of our financial consultants every week and give them their own client portal experience that allows them to access some of our basic planning tools. These are 2 to 3 minute little mini calculators, and as they complete them, it kind of builds the basis for a larger conversation. And so really it kind of forces the interaction of our financial consultants to engage with planning, to start to adopt the technology, because when the client and the customer is requesting it, kicking and screaming or not, they have to learn it themselves. And so we're really, that's just started within the last month or so, and we're starting to see some lift from that as well. So I thought I'd mention that.
We do have a question coming in on the chat line here. Richard Feder from Fort Lee, New Jersey writes, gee, all this development sounds like fascinating, but isn't it true that advisors and banks are hardly doing any planning at all? How is this development working? Tim, I think you have some data on that, don't you?
We sure do, Ken. There we go. Yeah, so we've been studying the delivery of financial planning through financial institutions for a long time. We began tracking it in earnest several years ago, and over that period of time, we've seen what you might call somewhat of an uptick in the level of planning activity that's happening in banks and credit unions. So, as you can see on the chart, going back to 2016, the average financial institution was averaging 1.4 plans per advisor per month. That number increased to 1.75 plans per month, and that's sort of where it's stayed since. I'm very excited about our most recent effort to benchmark planning activity in banks and credit unions. That's been spearheaded by Lee. It's something that she dubbed Planning Insights. And pulling from that data, we know that the average advisor with 602 clients is engaged in planning with only 3.5% of his or her clients. So planning penetration at the advisor level remains very thin.
So that would then raise the question of, well, maybe you should look at doing planning another way, perhaps centralized. I think, Chris, you've looked at that.
Yeah, we've been doing planning since 1998 from a perspective of having dedicated financial planners. I don't know why, I wasn't around at that point in time, why they went in that direction, but it's built a culture over these last 20 years to where financial planning is done by the financial planners. Up until recently, we've had those planners in particular regions of our footprint. But so for instance, we're in a lot in Tennessee. And so you have your Memphis planners, you have your Nashville planners, and so on. But with the expansion of our bank through a couple of acquisitions and mergers, we're now in 11 states. And so what we had to start thinking of is how can we take that same planning group and centralize them to operate among the entire footprint. And so we're right in the middle of transitioning there, but our planners are really up to speed and they're ready to go. They've been doing virtual planning for some time now. It goes kind of back to what Lee was saying in terms of time. Our advisors are incredibly busy. And, you know, for them, they look at opportunity after opportunity and which opportunity am I going to pick up? It's one of the reasons why insurance sales are so weak is because of the time that it takes. Well, financial planning takes a lot of time as well. So we've been looking for the centralized planning unit of how we can make that time frame that the client is in front of us and having to go through the planning process as expedited as possible. So a couple of things that we've implemented over the last couple of years is we provided software, and we use eMoney. We've been with eMoney for, I think, 13 or 14 years now. But we provided the eMoney software for our PC bankers, our private client bankers, as well as to our advisors. Now, our advisors had never done planning before, and we weren't really asking them to do plans. What we were asking them to do is wherever the relationship started, it typically didn't start at planning. It would start in the banking side, or it would start from the advisor. We were asking them, as you're discovering things about your client, in that discovery phase, what are you doing with that information? Most of them were sticking it in a file drawer. And we just ask, if we provide the software to you, would you put it in eMoney? And so what's happening is they're starting to populate that data before we ever get to planning. Then at the point in time that we introduce them to planning, some of that information is already provided for us, which expedites the process. In addition to that, they offer them at that first point of contact things like the client website and the vault and those kind of things that eMoney provides, so that they can go ahead and start inputting information as well, so that when planning comes along and we're ready to do the plan, a lot of that information is already there for us. So we then take it from there, and with our centralized plans, you know, we've really changed over the last couple of years from developing a book that's out of date the moment that you have it, and move towards how I describe it is we move from the office to the conference room in terms of developing that plan. We do it with the client, and the client then takes that and they're able to get engaged with it. They're able to see that their decisions in the moment affect their plan. And so it's been a really nice setting for us. It gives the advisor the mastery of CFPs that I think our shortest tenure of our planning staff is 12 years, and we have some that have been here 35, 38 years. So a great history there in terms of stability in that planning group, a lot of knowledge base, and it's been very effective for us.
So Chris, how do you work through, you know, a lot of the coaching I've done with financial advisors, they say, if I do the plan myself, if I create that plan, I know the client better. So is it the same person it sounds like you've got your CFPs that are creating the plan, but your advisors are delivering it still, right?
No, the advisors are not delivering the plan. Our disclosures for planning mean that the planners do the data gather, they do the plan presentation, and they're even there to help with the implementation. But it's done in conjunction with the advisor. The advisor's on that call with them. Maybe they're the ones face-to-face with the client in the conference room, and the planner is virtually coming into it to do the information. So they're there at the whole step, but they are not delivering the plans.
Okay. So Noreen, do you think that like a centralized approach would work for Huntington?
You know, it's a conversation that you have to have, right? But we
you're not just making that decision, but just thought I'd
Yeah, yeah, we think it's really important for the advisors. You know, we've done a lot of work to switch them from being people who, you know, sell a thing to a person to.
Whoop, you just cut out. Noreen, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? I went off mute.
Yes.
That's good. Okay, sorry about that.
Oh, no.
Now I forgot what I was saying. So what I was saying that we've had that conversation, right? It's because advisors say that they want the help with the input. And so we've gone back and forth, but we do keep coming back to the fact that we think it's really important from getting to know your client perspective, from switching from being a person who sells a thing to a client to be a person who develops a relationship and understands all the needs of the client if they really embrace planning. Now, we just yesterday had a work session about helping them with the conversation. So we've got a number of advisors who were bankers and licensed bankers, and now they've come up to be where we are similar to what John said, we're a bank broker dealer. We want to be able to help them switch their conversation. It's not a natural thing for a salesperson who's been successful doing one thing to just start doing something else, right? So how do we get them to do that? We think it's important. We think the scripting, like even to that, for some of the newbies is really going to be successful. So we're not thinking of going centralized. We know it works elsewhere, but we've decided to try a different way.
If I could jump in, I think flexibility is the key here. So at Ameriprise, just to give you some perspective, where I think we're way off on the right-hand side of the spectrum. So about 80% of our clients have some form of a goal-based advice relationship with an advisor. And just to give you, I mean, that's about 1 million clients either have a comprehensive advice relationship or have at least their goals online and have a foundational plan with us. And, I think that didn't happen by every advisor doing it by themselves, right? Although plenty have chosen to do it that way. We like a lot of the folks on the call, do have a centralized planning operation, but it's actually broader than planning. So what we really tried to build out there is a one-stop shop solution for anything having to do with getting ready for a client meeting. So up to and including the plan, right? So it could just mean illustrations. It could mean documentation. It could mean pulling down Morningstar reports. It could mean doing the financial plan and anywhere in between. And we really try to create a flexible structure so that depending on the type of business you run and the infrastructure you have locally, if you just want to engage a little bit to get some help, great. If you want that really a full-blown support, you can get that. And then the last thing I just share is I think technology is making this much easier than it used to be. And if we're not telling that story, I think we're missing out. So, advisors will tell you all day long that the reason, someone mentioned this, the reason they can't do it is they don't have time. And that might have been a legitimate excuse 15 years ago. I do not think that's a legitimate excuse anymore, because you either have all these different options to engage to get help, or the truth is, if your clients are engaged in some sort of asset aggregation tool, no matter which of the planning tool you use, we happen to use MoneyGuide Pro and Naviplan. They both have it. I know eMoney has it. So any of the big ones has an asset aggregation capability, which means if the clients are connected with you digitally, and you have the accounts that you have at your local institution, that should tell you the full financial picture. And your data gathering that used to take so long shouldn't really take that long. And so I just think we got to help advisors understand that their vision of financial planning might have been baked in a different decade. and technology has made this a totally different experience. And I heard someone mention, the book concept. I think, those days are old. Those days are over too, right? I'm sort of agreeing with whoever said that. This is about online collaboration. This is about a client being able to not only, see on a big screen when they're in the office or on a, screen like this, see how they're doing, and then be able to engage with their plan when they leave. So they have to be able to see how they're doing in real time. So market moves today, they shouldn't have to call their advisor, schedule an appointment, come in 2 weeks to talk about what the market move meant for their ability to retire. They should be able to see instantly online and then call with questions. So I think the paradigm has shifted massively, and we got to have confidence as leaders to tell advisors that the world they might be imagining is long gone, and it's a different world today.
I agree. I think the advisors I meet with, they still do, the vast majority still think it is a document. And I think part of I think the gap I see is I don't know that we have developed as an industry a process. I don't think every firm, I know Huntington has developed a process where this is how we work with our clients, right? But I think that's one of the things that we're missing. So I'm wondering, so we need to have a process, but if we're only at, let's call it, if we're lucky, 10% of our clients, if we're lucky, 10% of our clients are in a planning relationship, is scale the issue? Is it that they just can't get to all those clients? And how do we, I don't know if that is scalability is the issue, but what's the issue and why aren't we getting there?
I think that's part of it. Kind of want to piggyback on some of the things that Dave just said is, one, we've got to put the tools in their hands and make it easy. So, we're a bank program, but we use Ameriprise. We're a community bank, and we use Ameriprise as our access, as our broker dealer. And so the tools and capabilities that we can deliver at a community bank are tremendous because of that partnership. And one of those things that really was on display when we got kind of shut down during the crisis was that, here the market's tanking, but through their financial plan, the clients that had those, I could direct them onto the website, and let's look at together that you're still at 90% to your goal. The market's down 35%. We think everything's, going to evaporate and you can't retire anymore, but according to our metric, you're still on. And so you're pointing them to something that is tangible that they can see. And when you have that buy-in, when the advisors have that buy-in, when they can say, hey, regardless of how things are going, I can take you back to this, and I'm not judged on performance anymore. It's not, did you do 12% last year and my buddy got 15%? If we're in that performance race, we're going to lose every time. But are we, guiding them back to what's important, guiding them back holistically to the goals? And so that's part of it. The other part is the flexibility. And one of the things that I love about our partnership with Ameriprise is that we've got the flexibility. If I'm the advisor that wants to outsource that, boom, I send it to that department. I fill out a little worksheet, they send it back. But if I'm a hands-on advisor, which I tend to be, I can do it myself, and I can use either a foundational advice, which is a watered down one goal, or I can go comprehensive and do everything all at once, or I can start foundational and build to the comprehensive. So we got to make it easy for advisors to let them nibble first and then kind of go on. We don't always need to do the financial plan with stock options and a buyout and all this other stuff. We can start with just, let's try to get your retirement income goal done first. And once we get that done, then we'll add layers to that. Then we'll be able to increase. But we've got to make it easy, I think, for the advisors, but also tangible. They got to see the benefit. And when you look at the old big dumb binder that we put on the shelves, that as soon as you print it out and hand it to the client, it ends up with, dog teeth marks on it because nobody's ever looked at it again. We get rid of that and move more to, hey, I'm going to put this on the website, and every time you log in, you're going to see where you're at percent to goal. That's the first thing that you're going to see, because that's the most important thing. Forget how the market did yesterday. How'd you do? How are you percent to goal? And if we can bring it all back to what matters, that's what clients instill us. That's how we don't lose clients. That's how we instill these relationships. And that's how we get to the deeper parts of the planning, is if we can at least get that foundational piece there. And that to me is where you got to start.
When COVID back earlier in the spring and the market was doing crazy things, I know even myself, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even want to look at my plan. But then I got the courage and I looked at it and I was like, you know what? I'm going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And now I can look at my plan on my phone. So I agree with you. And I just really wanted to, echo what you were saying about just being a document that is living, breathing, that you can access it at any time. And especially during this market, right? So, Kelly, I was interested in some of you guys have done some research around this whole COVID thing, and I thought this might be a good time to bring that up.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. I was just going to reference that and such a great, topic to discuss. I think, at eMoney, we conducted research that we actually just completed, and it's our COVID study. And it basically demonstrates how financial planning technology can maintain a strong client relationship during even really uncertain economic times. So Lee has a quick slide here. And I think these stats just really prove the point of the fact that, COVID has accelerated a trend that we already knew was happening, right? We know that with Reg BI and other things going on in the industry, advisors were moving towards trying to become planning led, because we know that clients really in these uncertain times, that's when they realize that they can't do it on their own, right? They're realizing, okay, you know what, I really need to talk to somebody and I need that trusted guide. And here's what we found. I think some big takeaways here are that of the advisors that we polled, 76% said they could reassure clients that they are still on track with their financial plan. And I think that's the beauty of financial planning technology. It's creating that transparency between the advisor and client, so the client knows what goals they have, and they can log in themselves and they can see how they're tracking. And I think to just jump down here, 60% could refocus the conversation on goal realization and planning rather than market volatility. Market volatility, that's going to be something every client, especially, in the beginning of COVID and the market, they want to focus on that. They want to talk about that. But to the extent that you as a coach can bring the client back to, just like you said, Michael, how did you do today? Are you still on track towards your goals? What is, your plan look like right now? Again, that's what planning technology can do for the client. And it is just another tool in the toolbox that allows that advisor to be the coach and shift the conversation away from the market and back to the client. And then, I think, 56% could reassure clients their financial plan made them more prepared for the current environment. So it's about the preparation before this type of market came up. It's also about incorporating market volatility and stress testing their plan along the way. So making sure that you incorporate that into the plan and that your technology has the right techniques and solutions that allow you to do that, so that you can really assure the client that, hey, we've looked at some different scenarios and we really stress tested things.
Yeah, one of the things we've seen too, Kelly, is that, and we talked about this a little bit, is that those that were planning are still planning and they're even building steam and they're stronger, but those that really weren't strong with it are kind of falling off, those that were dabbling in it. In short, it was just like it seems like the gap of those that plan and those that don't plan is actually widening. So yeah, kind of curious from the group if there's is there anything special that anybody's doing today relative to that as to trying to get better, advisors adopting the planning process?
Yeah, one of the things that we've been doing is just sharing that piece that, hey, when we can direct clients in this volatility back to their goals, that's what's calming them down. It's not, hey, look at our portfolio. Hey, let's look at our 3-year track record. None of that's keeping clients calm. What's keeping them calm is let's take them here. Let's show them their percent to goal. Let's show them where they are. And the more that we can do that and the more stories that we share within our peer groups and with our mentors, that's what's getting guys that haven't been doing it all of a sudden saying, hey, I got to do this because I think some of my clients might be at risk. I better put this together. I better get their goals online. I better be able to get to a percentage. Otherwise, I'm going to lose assets. And we've, through this, my team's gained about $6 million in assets just because of that, because we were able to go and as clients are having conversations with their friends, they don't have that or haven't been offered that. And maybe, they absolutely can have it with the firm they're with, but they've never been talked to about it. And when they say, you know what, yeah, the market's down bad, but I'm still 92% to goal. Well, how do you know what percent to goal you are? And how's that in real time? How do you do that? So those reinforced conversations and seeing flows in, and our most successful teams are having inflows instead of outflows. are ones that think they're at risk are just looking up and saying, hey, that's what I want, that's what I need. And now's the litmus test for whether or not you're really engaged with your clients or not.
So what dollar amount do you do financial planning?
So for us, we do the foundational advice, or at least your retirement income goal. We do that on every client we onboard. So depending on what your practice is, you know, if you're a practice that onboards at 50,000 or at 250,000, whatever client level you set, that client gets at a minimum of foundational advice.
So help me understand what that minimum foundation is. You know, for us, it's it contains all of the elements that a full-blown financial plan does. Now, it may not have the depth. Ken and I had this discussion, I'm guessing 6 months or a year ago, because we measure financial plans not just based off of eMoney or Money Guide. We have a 2-pager, and our goal is 80% of the people that our branch advisors meet with walk out with a financial plan. So it's basically a pyramid, you know, similar to the CFP financial planning pyramid. And they have to document that they've gone through this. So it covers cash reserves, it covers you know, debt issues, it covers risk management, life insurance, legal documents, all of that. And so they have to complete this this form. They give a copy, the member, the client, we give them a clean copy, they can take notes, but they present from this format. So I will tell you, our goal is 80% of the people that come through our shop walk out with some form of a financial plan. Now, you get up in the higher dollar limits. Now we're moving it deep into the software and using, you know, all of the pieces that it presents. But for us, it's a career development tool for the new holistic advisor that we're bringing on board. So it's pretty easy to implement. We teach them the fact finding, the presentation, you know, the analytics, all of that kind of stuff. So as they move up, they get more and more power to it.
For us, it's that foundational advice is a single goal. And typically what that is your retirement income goal. What do you need per month to retire, and how are you going to get there?
And so you know, you'll find I'm a contrarian on a lot of things. And part of the way I coach is to challenge people. So I'm going to challenge in good-natured challenge. Does anybody know a 35 or a 38-year male, female, married, couple kids that dropped dead?
Yes.
So I'm planning on a retirement piece. I just committed, in my mind, you know, kind of a mortal sin here, malpractice, because I didn't talk to those folks ahead of time when I met them when they were 30 or 35 years old. It's a couple $100 policy. You know, couple $100 premium. Yeah, we're not making any money on it, but it protects their college funding. You know, I mean, it just, to me, that's financial planning. You know, and I agree. I think a lot of people in our industry are talking about just what you're talking about. So I'm not being critical of what you're talking about. We've just taken a different stance that, you know, we're a credit union, you know, so, you know, it's people helping people. We're not looking at quarter. We have to make the revenue goals and all of that kind of stuff. But we're not beholding to shareholders. You know, we're beholding to our members. And so I feel that we demonstrate all the way across the spectrum that our members walk out better for having sat down with us.
Right. And I don't disagree with you. I think we're just getting to the same place a different way. You know, to me, you start with the goal, and the goal is you want to retire, you want your kids to go to college. What blows that up? It's all well and fine as long as you're still earning money, but you get hurt or you die and you can't meet this goal. So that's where you get to the DI policy. That's where you get to life insurance is once we establish that this is your goal, once we know this is where you want to head, let's talk about all the reasons why you can't get there and how many of them can we mitigate. And so that's kind of our team.
Let me jump in.
find that goal first.
Yeah, let me jump in here and weigh in on that, because I think that's a really important point. When I say that our advisors don't have time to do financial planning, I'm talking about comprehensive financial planning. Yes, they could do foundational planning if they wanted to, but the vast majority of the clients that they're dealing with that we're offering planning to needs the complexity of an advanced plan. And I can't ever see the day when our folks are going to have the time, especially our high-end producers, to do these plans themselves. So that's why we have the centralized unit and set the standard there. When we do financial planning, it's a comprehensive income-based financial plan that covers all the gamuts. And that's what we consider planning. An interesting background to this is when eMoney first offered foundational planning, we were one of the first banks to jump on that because we thought at the time DOL was going to require retirement plans for all of these retirement accounts. And so we went ahead and got foundational planning for all of our advisors. We trained them how to use it, and we still had our planning staff that could do the comprehensive stuff. And almost immediately, because we had done comprehensive for so long with this group, they didn't look at foundational planning as a plus. They looked at it as it's so limited. You know, my clients need all this other information, so I'm never going to use foundational planning. And it turned out it was not used hardly at all. And so, again, it's kind of the mindset of what a financial plan is, and I think banks vary greatly on that. I think a lot of banks are calling retirement plans financial plans, and there's other banks that are considering it an entirely different definition.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think it's a great discussion because it hits at the core of what we started with, which is how do you develop holistic advisors, right? And my point of view, you know, I'm sort of with Mike, not because we work for the same firm, but because I happen to disagree with Mike. You know, we saw the stats that Tim put up earlier. Basically, no one's doing planning in the banking world, right? So we saw, what was it, a couple of households a month when you have 600 total. So, I mean, my perspective is we can pound our chest and say, you know, my financial plan is more comprehensive than yours. The truth is most people aren't doing it because I think we've made it so complex for folks that that they say, you know what, that's just not my business. I'm going to manage money instead. My belief is we got to start somewhere. And the best path for me into the true comprehensive advice that we all want to deliver to our clients is getting started small and working your way in. And my guess is Mike has had this experience. I know I've had this experience as I've coached advisors across the country, is you get them started, you know, the clients that aren't engaged with you in advice that just are, you know, have accounts with you, you get them started talking about a goal. All of a sudden it opens up 100 other doors and all sorts of other opportunities. I'm from the point of view, I'd rather all of our clients have something and then work their way to more than a select small group of our clients have everything and no one else has, and everybody else is just an account holder. And I think that's what the studies show.
Yeah, and that's the rub, I think, with bank, especially bank advisors. I remember when I first started as a bank advisor, I wanted to have as many branches as possible. You know, I wanted to have 10 branches, and I would go all over the central Kentucky to find any client anywhere. And now I'm old and crotchety. Like, I want one branch, and I want to see half the people there in the branch. And, you know, as our businesses evolve, what we end up with is, you know, I've got advisors that have 2,500 households. Are they any good to most of them? No, they can't be. But they've got a lot of single product, single idea households. And what they've done is they've chased revenue as opposed to deepening a relationship. You know, at the stage of the career that our best advisors get to, they want maybe 50 to 100 households between $750,000 and $1 million, and they want to do everything for them. That's the ideal practice. That's what we all dream about. You know, but in reality, what it is we do really good for about 50 families, and the rest of our families we kind of half-heartedly do. Not because we don't want to. We still love them. We still care about them. But we just don't have the time, the effort, and the commitment to be able to get there because we've got too much. So that's part of the coaching process, too, is convincing your advisors that you're better off if you got rid of half of your book. If you gave that to somebody else, you're going to be so much better off. And if you gave up half your branches, you're going to be better off. Quality of life is going to be better. You're going to be deeper. you're going to do more. But you've got to Dave's point, you've got to start somewhere. So you teach them to start doing the foundational, teach them to start expanding those relationships, and then they have the comfort level to let go of all that they've done. But that's, unfortunately, that's how we design these bank programs. In the early days, in their infancy, was let's get as many people on board as we possibly can, and never thought about let's take care of them one at a time and take care of everything.
Our industry, those are great points. Our industry has this structural problem that we're fighting. And our challenge is that our value to clients is advice. It's all these plans, it's our knowledge. Our value is advice, of which we charge $0 for and earn $0 on. However, what we sell them in product is where our revenue comes from. So as an advisor, we're in this predicament where our value is advice, but we earn nothing off of the advice. We earn it off the products. So where do we spend our energy? Well, we spend it on products because that's where the revenue's at. So we've got to change that dynamic somehow, or change the mindset behind it. And I think that's one of the things that has really slowed down the adoption of planning, of why we're doing 2 plans per month per advisor, is because we're giving away the advice, which is where the value is. And we're charging for products of which there are many of, and they're somewhat commoditized. It's a complete mismatch. If you were ever to design the industry today, you'd never do it like that.
Right. And listen, we went through a conversion. When Ameriprise got into the financial institutions group, they bought out a small community bank broker dealer that we were part of. And it was we had a free for all with products. We had as many annuities and whatever that we wanted to sell. There was an unlimited number of stuff we could do. Well, when we go through that process, we had advisors that I was having conversations with across the country that said, my business cannot go on if I don't have this annuity company. And I just looked at them like, so you're 100% one product dependent? But they were very serious. There were guys that were in heated conversations in rooms based on we were going to lose one insurance carrier and that was going to destroy their business. But that's been the focus, to your point, is that when we craft it around the product and we make or break the product, the problem with that is, and what we see if we look through our history, is the product of the day that's the best at the time, especially in the VA space, those go out of favor. Hartford tried to buy all those back. AXA tried to buy all those back. John Hancock got completely out of the space. Manulife got completely out of the space. We go back through our history and we see if we set all of our effort and energy on the product, we're always going to be disappointed because the product's going to change. It's going to go out of favor. Things are going to happen. But if we can circle that back around, if we can change the conversation to advice, and everything's based on advice and you paying for advice, not paying for the product, now we've moved to where we want to be. Because my value to you is not the product. You can get the product from any clown in town. My value is that I care about you and I'm going to provide the best advice for you and your family. But we've got to get better about having that conversation.
So I would really love to hear from Noreen or John, because this has got to be something that you guys are facing, and would love to hear any input you have about maybe how you're dealing with it, or if you agree or disagree.
I'll go first, if that's all right. So we've always viewed planning as the opportunity to give advice-based solutions and advice-based recommendations, not just product recommendations, right? And the one thing that I think that brings us all together is that we want to have better conversations with our customers and clients. We want to address their goals. We want to do it in a way that's where it's safe, where it's in their best interest, where we're complying with the regulations that Congress has set forth. And unfortunately, we're also trying to do it in an environment where we don't get to see them very often anymore. And I believe our clients crave information. I believe our clients crave a touch, the frequency of communication. And I think planning is really about communication. So guys, I'm going to share one game changer that has really rocked our world this year at BBVA, and shame on us for not implementing it years before. But those of you that are familiar with Fourfield and with Broadridge and the Broadridge Advisor tool, we finally launched it, and I don't know how we did it. We launched it on March 1st, which couldn't have been better timing for us. And with 220 financial consultants and with 56 private bankers, we have since March 1st reached out and communicated with our clients over 110,000 times since March 1st. And this is utilizing the Broadridge tool. Now I'm going to show my screen real quick, so there's some risk in that. But this one just went out yesterday. Let's see, can you guys see that all right? All right, so this is a set and forget email that goes out. And I have the ability, and so do all of my financial consultants, to do these set and forget emails, and they're timely. And they're based not just on the financial plan, but they're based on the things that are important to my customers today. The coronavirus, the CARES Act, the Secures Act, the tax filing deadlines. I mean, this is what makes a holistic advisor, in my opinion, is the ability to reach out, to communicate and give them information that's important to them. And here's what's amazing. We have a 55% click-through rate where customers are opening these emails 55% of the time. And we are communicating with our customers more than we ever have since the history of since I've been at this company. Guys, we are doing amazing business. And when I say business, I mean, we're really communicating and reaching out and having the kind of conversations that we want to have. And that leads to, that leads to the advice that we want to give. And in turn, that's going to lead to the revenue and the things that the firm craves as well. So I'll end on that note. Broadridge has been a game changer for us this year. Thank you.
I know.
Oh, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I know we have a few minutes, but there's just one topic that did not come up in today's discussion, which I'm really surprised about. That I would just, John, I appreciate your sort of game-changing mentality. I'm going to offer one that for us has been pretty critical in this environment. We started by luck a few years ago training our advisors as part of our regular coaching on how to interact virtually, because we had a sense that clients would want to stop coming into the office, especially in some of our major metro markets where, going into the office is a giant pain. If you're in Atlanta or DC or Boston or any of these places where traffic's a nightmare. And so we incorporated all that in everything we've been doing. And it's been a blessing for us because, one of the things that's been so critical, even for our best advisors and our best planners, is they weren't necessarily equipped to do what we're all doing today, which is have an interactive discussion on camera with a background that looks professional, and then actually share a screen and click through stuff. I mean, that's a skill that many of us have had to develop, impromptu, right? Is click, collaborate, talk on the screen. That's hard. And I think that's really a blessing for us. I think it's going to be so critical in the future, even post this crisis, that if you could be the best player in the world, but if you can't have a digital interaction with your clients, I think you might get left behind.
So I know that, in fact, until you said, David, that the time was getting short, I did not realize how quickly this is going. So there was one thing that we wanted to kind of touch on today. And, we've talked about the advisors doing the plan. We've talked about, we have teams doing a plan. I'd love to hear about the appetite there would be about outsourcing that planning. So would that be something like you would actually be able to hire an outside firm to actually do the planning for your clients? And Noreen, you look like, that's intriguing.
Well, I'm interested in what that would look like, especially since we think it's so important for the advisor to be, really intimate with the details. Tell me more about what you're asking.
So, Kelly, I actually think you do a better job at describing that.
Yeah, I'd love to jump in. So at eMoney, one of the things that we are in pilot with is outsourced planning. So we serve a lot of different models of financial professionals and firms. And we know that for some firms, they are interested in seeing what an outsourced model looks like, where a third party is coming in and actually everything from data input to constructing the plan is being done on behalf of their advisor. And then the advisor is actually being handed the plan and being coached how to present it. So I'd actually love to we only have a minute or two here. I'd love to tap Connor to jump in. I have Connor from our eMoney practice management and financial planning team at eMoney, and he's actually part of the group that's conducting the pilot. So Connor, if you're able to jump in real quick, I'd love to just have you kind of outline the why behind our research on why we're starting to do this and what we found. You can jump in.
I think he's here. He's coming. There he is.
Hello, everyone. And good afternoon. Thanks, Cal. Yeah, so we recently just started launching a pilot for our outsourced planning service, and it was everything from just data entry and then passing it back all the way through plan delivery from the outsourced team. So they would hand over the fact finding. We would also then be responsible to deliver the plan based off of objectives that we ultimately, come up with from the client themselves. So we did a bunch of research to try and figure out exactly, what portion or where to fall into that gap. And the two biggest things that we kind of found out of the 200 or so advisors and firms that we surveyed was that about a third were willing to give full kind of responsibility and ownership of the plan over to some sort of third-party company. So, they wanted to still hold on to the client relationship or the planning relationship. And then a little bit more than half were willing to do so as long as it stayed as part of a white labeled planning offering, where, as Kelly had mentioned, we'd get the fact finding information, which they had received, and then we would build the plans and then deliver it back to the advisor so that they could deliver it to the client. So they would not ever know that it was actually built and developed by a third party. And then I think the only other thing that I'd just throw out there as kind of fodder for the group is as you think about transitioning a structure, the groups that had more interest in an offering like this were actually the larger offices. So the smaller offices, which we defined as under 50 advisors, only about a third of them were likely to use this service at any level. And then the offices, which we defined as larger, which we put as 50 advisors and up, they were over 50% likely to purchase. So as we think about all the different stuff that you guys have touched on before, getting advisors into their, most valuable time and, centralized planning groups or outsourced teams, it seems like home offices are interested in trying to enable advisors as you start to grow to bigger sizes to do some more of the client relationship aspects and get them out of some of the, the technology training, understanding, and really building relationships and holding them.
And
Kelly, do we know if Chris joined us?
Counterintuitive, right? That you would think that at least in the banking space, where you've got a 2 or 3 rep shop, right? They really suffer from the scale of being able to provide. They may be too small to even have a team, right? So you might think that in that environment you'd have some interest in outsourcing, whereas a shop with 200 advisors has the ability, for example, to have a planning infrastructure, right? In fact, I think we've got some data on that, right, Tim?
Yeah, we only have a couple of minutes left, so and it's close to 5, so I don't want to put you all to sleep with a lot of data. But when we've looked at this, the vast majority of banks and credit unions rely only on their advisors to prepare and deliver the plans. There's a group of about 11% of those institutions have some kind of centralized support desk. The interesting thing, I think as pertains to this conversation, is that the use of a centralized planning unit is much more concentrated among the larger banks, and that's got to be due to scale.
But also that when you're looking at plan penetration, and these are new plans, new plans initiated during the year, centralized planning units have 3 times the penetration that financial advisors do. And again, speaking to David, to Dave's point about flexibility, those that are using some kind of combination of centralized and delivery through financial advisors do even better.
Yeah.
Although those numbers are still low.
Yeah, I would go with, I think Steve mentioned 80% of their clients is what they're shooting for. And I think that's a really great target. That's at BMO, I know that was like the highest rate that we had as far as penetration goes. But I mean, a good firm, I'm thinking, is closer to like 40% penetration. Mm-hmm. So we have a long way to go, is I think kind of where I was, going with that, is between, I see these numbers and I think about 40 or 80%. I think we've got some work to do. And, I was just wondering if outsourcing that might be one of the solutions to put in the mix.
Mm-hmm. And we do this survey every few years, and 4 or 5 years ago, there were a few firms in the survey that said they outsourced. This past year, there weren't. But again, it's another option. It's probably time to do some closing remarks, unless someone else has something they prefer to say first. We certainly want to thank everyone in the virtual table for participating. But we did get a couple of questions from the broader audience, but that's probably because you guys are doing such a good job they couldn't think of anything else to say. Want to thank again the sponsors, Ameriprise and eMoney, for your support, and thanks to Pac Life for presenting this this webinar. And I'll let you know that the next one's coming up September 10th, as we continue this conversation. And that one will be focusing on holistic advice and Reg BI. So hopefully many of you will join us again, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Here.
Thanks, everybody.
Good to see you.
Thanks all.
Too.